just listening to people that actually are part of the culture that you're trying to target rather than thinking for them.
These kind of partnerships do really work, and they actually do have a meaningful impact for the future.
If you can get people to interact and play with the brand, if you see what I mean, and the ethos and everything really connects, that's meaningful.
Welcome to the first panel of the day, Your Voice in Music Culture. So my name's Seb Croft and I'm one of the directors across the road at Koko 2.0. Has anyone been Koko yet? Can anyone remember their time at Koko? I don't believe you. No. Okay, so yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And so thank you very much to Prism and our neighbours for inviting me along to talk on this very important topic. So the music industry is made up obviously of the traditional players, new disruptors, innovators, constantly changing things, and of course plenty of big egos, big ideas, right? This is show business. So how do we find a voice that works as a brand? How do you come across authentically? How can you engage with artists, engage in fans in a way that actually helps them? Because if you're helping the fans, then you're going to be helping the brand. So how do we move from broadcast to engagement, from sponsorship to a true partnership? As we delve into new opportunities around sharing data, sharing connections, intelligence, we ask our panellists here, wonderful lineup of experts, what makes a partnership work for them? What makes a partnership work for their partners? And what makes a partnership work for the fans? Is there still a place for traditional sponsors in this world? Badging a name, putting the name above the door, is that something that still works? Or is the new opportunities that have come with content and with technology and innovation allowing us to actually delve in deeper and actually talk to fans in a much more meaningful way? So let's say goodbye to underperforming sponsorships, the old way, and let's start actually looking at these exciting ways that we can engage these, what essentially are communities. How can we step into those communities and have a real voice, cut through what is ever becoming like a much more exciting but very loud place? So rights holders, as you see here, sit at the very forefront of music and entertainment, acting as an intersection between the brands, between the artists, and between the fans. Sitting right on the coalface, as you say. So here we have three expert panellists, each representing a different side of what it means to be a rights holder in music. So by way of quick introduction, I'd like to introduce you to Maddy, Carey, who Director of Partnerships at Broadwick Live, who are owners and operators of some of the most exciting and groundbreaking UK venues. Printworks, Drumsheds, Mayfield Depot up in Manchester. So, any more to say on that, Maddy? And what's actually happening with Printworks then?
Yeah, the famous Printworks. Hi everyone, nice to meet you all. So Printworks is probably what we're most well known for at Broadwick Live. We've had the venue for 6 years now, and we have literally just launched, I think 2 days ago, was our last season there. So you might have seen lots of shouting about it on Instagram, lots of people trying to get tickets, which hopefully they have all now. So we did our pre-sale yesterday, general sale today, and it's been our most successful one ever, which just goes to show kind of the heritage and the legacy that venue has. So it's a big project.
Okay, awesome. Cool. And then we've got Dabieh, founder of CloudX, global entertainment company and record label, founding out of London, so pioneering some of the most important new artists on the UK scene at the moment. So Ray Black, Koko Asante, Santino Ilasaint, to name just a few. And Dave's very much the master of how he can help artists and fans kind of interact in a new world when it comes to... Dave and his team are the masters on how they can engage their fans via new social media technologies. And then, anything you'd like to expand on that?
That was quite good.
Dave?
I appreciate
Is that all right? Cool. And last but certainly not least, Pete Jordan, the weird scientist himself, founder of Weird Science, owners of some of the most well-respected and independent festivals in the UK, including Made, Magnifico, A Weird and Wonderful, and Legends. Anything else to say, Pete?
I'm sure we'll get into it as we go along, but yeah, that's a good start.
Wonderful. Okay, cool. We're going to follow a few kind of themes as we're going through this discussion as we talk. So very much like now, partnership is the word of the day, right? So when it comes to rights, brands and rights holders coming together. So as we move from kind of a sponsorship to partnerships, what is the music looking for? What is the music industry looking for from brands? So we'll actually kick off with you, Maddy. So I guess like a little bit, what like, what's the difference between sponsorship and partnership in your mind?
Yeah, I think it starts with the language piece, really. You know, the word sponsorship implies it's the brand giving something to the rights holder and not a collaborative piece. So I think the word partnership, we're actually changing all of our language internally. You know, we used to have sponsorship contracts, for example, and now it's partnership contracts, just as a really small kind of minor language change. But actually that sort of generates a whole piece of partnership, moving forward to the partnership piece, which is a collaboration. You know, there is so much that brands can give to a rights holder and so much that you can work in both ways, that it's really important to establish something that is mutually beneficial, and that's what we're really trying to do with our brands. And for us, partnerships is everything from the suppliers we work with to the production agencies that we work with to the artists, the promoters. Everything that is beyond our business is a partnership. And that also then extends to brand partnerships as well. So it's looking at something that's not just you know, an investment in a monetary value, but it's like what can we actually benefit from that is more from a badging exercise, and something that's a lot more collaborative and a lot more engaging and authentic as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sponsorship does have that transactional kind of ring to it, doesn't it? Like football shirts, which of course there's like, you know, there's been a place for eyeballs, but yeah, it's interesting to see now that we've got all of these new kind of ways of engaging, then how that gets utilised. How about on the artist side, Dave?
Yeah, I would agree completely. I think a lot of it is about creating touch points over, I guess, longer periods of time, which also really means, you know, both sides understanding what the other person is trying to get out of the relationship, is what Maddy's talking about in terms of collaboration. And it's definitely more about talking to communities than just going, you know, here's X amount of money for one post. You know, that's like a really different metric that we were making decisions based off when we were talking about stuff as sponsorships as opposed to partnerships. Like partnerships has a much longer term metric, I think. It's like, how are we teaching and educating a community rather than going, boom, what'd you get out of this one moment?
Totally. And how do artists, like, there always was that whole vision, I suppose, in culture of selling out when you partner with a brand. Is that something that you think is still...
I think it depends on the artist. Yeah. I mean, some are just trying to chase the bag. They don't really care how it comes. But I think for a lot of people, they are hyper conscious of associating not just with brands, but with anybody, including collaboration-wise with other artists, with the type of clothes they wear, with the kind of cars they drive, about making sense for their story and who they are. So it really depends from artist to artist. But I think generally there's a feeling, also from just a much younger generation, that they want to connect with things that feel consistent with their story. So I think it's definitely that mentality of authenticity.
And Pete, how do you think the audience actually take? Do you think it's becoming much more sophisticated in their approach to how brands activate? Are the audience demanding more?
It's definitely more sophisticated. As both these guys have said, collaboration's really the key. Understanding what your demographic wants and needs. But we've seen that really move on in the last 10 years. It's a bit salesy, the whole sponsorship idea. It's like, we'll sponsor you, you'll buy more of our beer. These days, it's creating meaningful interaction between the audience and, as you say, converting it into your future customer and maybe loyal partner rather than customer, I suppose. And yeah, you can see the way it's being done now. The linking of certain brands into certain events comes with thought rather than just a big badge over the top. It still is done wrong, but when it's done right, these moments do mean something, and that connection is really, really important with the audience.
And do you think it has to be a long-term thing? Like, do the audience feel like they need, when a brand gets involved in a certain area in culture, they should be like investing into it on a long-term basis?
Yes and no. There's certain things which will be always quite a short-term thing. So if you're looking at a younger audience and trying to connect them, by the time they reach their 20s, it may not be relevant anymore. But there's other long-term relationships where, you know, if you're you could stay with a company for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. And like, I guess as we're moving from like broadcast to like true engagement, from your guys' point of view, how can brands best leverage the assets that you have, whether that's at a venue, festival, or whether it's actually dealing with an artist and their rights as well? We'll start with Maddy again, actually, because I think Broadwick, you guys do it well. You don't see a lot of like overt pieces around, do you?
Yeah, and I think that's where sometimes the education and relationships with brands are really important for us to both understand the kind of aesthetic and the assets that we have, because for us and our venues, we have a really solid and quite tight aesthetic. You look at our Instagram page, for example, and there are no brand posts on there, and it's very, very clean, and it's, our marketing team are like, that's the way it's going to be. So you have to be, think outside the box in terms of, like you were saying, it's not just about that one post and getting kind of that sort of tick box criteria. It's about thinking a little bit more about what's actually going to work and what's actually going to integrate into the venue. So it's about thinking like, is there a particular event that is aligned with this brand that we can actually do something that's a bit more upweighted in terms of brand presence on the ground? Is it something that we do that's a little bit more collaborative on those brand channels that we can actually help them with? Because we obviously have a great amount of content, loads of assets that we can use that we actually see work really, really well when a brand uses it on their channels, and we have a team that actually can help that and support that and make that happen. So it's just about kind of thinking about different ways that we can go about something that when there is potentially sometimes a bit more restriction, then perhaps you get a bit more freedom with something like a festival where the kind of narrative is a little bit more fun and a little bit more open in terms of what we can do.
Okay, cool. So I guess when you're like, it's kind of moving from a model from trying to engage the people inside the room, but also utilising mechanisms to use programming to engage people outside across digital.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. And how about yourself, Dave?
I think it's very bespoke, depending on the format, depending on the artist, depending on... I just think everything's very bespoke these days. Like, actually, just like what Maddy was saying, like, perhaps if you have a certain type of event, you're going to change how you interrelate with the brands and also how you leverage what you have. And we find that, because we do a lot of live as well, we've actually worked with Printworks quite a few times, and we find that even using the same venue for very different audiences, you want to use the space differently, and brands will also want to incorporate themselves differently into the conversation. So I think about it more about being very mindful and understanding of your demographic, of the audience, and of what you're trying to achieve. Like, having these sort of blanket ways of working with anybody just doesn't work in the same ways anymore. Like, even because of the acceleration of technology, like, kids are on TikTok from like age 8 or something. I didn't even have a phone. It's kind of weird. But like, they all understand what is going on in the world around them. They're just a lot more aware and have a lot more critical thinking, with what's being targeted at them. So yeah, I just think it's about being very bespoke about what you do. Like, everything should be one of one. Everything should be deliberate and well thought out. It's basically what Maddy was saying. I just copied what she was saying. Basically.
How would you say then? How do you look to learn more about the fans, about the people that you're trying to engage? Are there mechanisms that you go about? I'm trying to ask you a question that Maddy hasn't answered it.
I think you just have to listen. Like, it's not very difficult. It's like, how do you find out what 14-year-olds like? Well, you ask them. Simple. First, you've got a lot of data out there, and the analytics. I think you've got a data section coming up later. But the analytics are all there. All the information is there. The insights from TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter are very easily accessible to absolutely everybody, and that can help you make some decisions. But like, for example, with my company, it's like, we wanted to get better at TikTok. I don't really use social media personally, so I just hired an 18-year-old who uses TikTok all day. And he was like, well, what's my job? I said, use TikTok. He was like, that's not a job. I was like, yeah, that's a job. And that's his job. And it works. And so, we started the year, we had like 17 TikTok followers, because I was in control of the account, by which I mean I didn't use the account because I don't know how to use it. And now we've got a few tens of thousands, right? And so it's really just about finding people that, just listening to people that actually are part of the culture that you're trying to target, rather than thinking for them. You know, like if you think about how things are traveling even on social media now, it's not like one person posting and that going viral. It's about, you know, many people posting the same things off their own volition. That's how TikTok works. You know, that's how Instagram Reels are now working. It's how Facebook's working. It's about user-generated content. Like, they're telling you this is what we find interesting. We don't have to tell them anymore. So I think the culture of, you know, who's in control of the conversation has changed.
Absolutely. I mean, there's supporting emerging artists as a campaign, and then there's actually putting tangible benefits to elevate and to amplify artists as well, that I guess people are really looking for more and more. Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I think people are just interested in hearing from communities, and I think like emerging artists as a blanket, it's just ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? It's like, on one hand, you can't treat an 8-piece jazz band the same as like a drill rapper or a singer from Nashville. Do you know what I mean? It's bespoke, but people are interested in the story of how someone emerges from a community, because that's what music ultimately comes from, you know? Like, you only have to go to Notting Hill Carnival and then ask where all the yardies are. Like, do you know what I mean? They're in West cooking up. So it's like, it's about finding where communities are, and emerging artists are examples of how these communities manifest over time and what they're talking about. And that's why emerging artists is such an exciting space to be in, because it's all about community, I would say. But what do you reckon, Maddy? You agree?
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And I think... Pass it back.
Hospital pass.
Totally agree. I think I just wanted to pick up on what you said about trusting the experts as well, because I think that's really important. I think, like you said, the best partnerships that we've had are with people that know how we work and we know how they work, and have been with probably for a couple of years. And so trust that when we say, you know, we're opening this new venue, we don't have any details about it, but it's going to happen at this point and we really want you to be involved. We don't have a site plan, we don't have this. We do normally, don't worry. But, you know, for those brands to be like, yeah, we absolutely have worked with you, we know you can deliver. So obviously that takes some relationship building to get there, but that's when I think the most successful partnerships come. It's like, you know, pick the people to work with that are experts in their field, in the same way that it's, you know, work with brands that are obviously, you know, aligned with your goals and visions. And then what were you saying about working with emerging artists? Yeah, I do think those kind of partnerships really work. We, a couple of years ago, did a partnership with Smirnoff on their Equalising Music campaign, which was to get more women into music and electronic music specifically. And a number of the people that were on that campaign that were the mentees at that point, so we had mentors like Peggy Goo and the Blessed Madonna, and the mentees were people who are actually now playing at our venues. So it's people like Jaguar and Emerald and people that are really, really successful. So these kind of partnerships do really work, and they actually do have a meaningful impact for the future. So it's definitely a really good place to start.
And do you think the success from that was because or in part, because you were appealing to not just emerging artists, but a specific community associated with that? Dance music.
Yeah, absolutely. And also highlighting and recognizing where there are places to improve and where we can work on, and actually sort of owning that by saying, you know, look at the lineups on festivals, look on the even for our venues and our nights, the women and females are really low. So it's like actually saying, you know, we recognize that, let's do something about it and do something meaningful, which, yeah, I definitely think was successful.
And it's not necessarily the bookers who are at fault, and it's correctly identified that actually when it's something like that, it's from the grassroots. There's not enough representation of females in dance music across the whole board. So it's attacking that, you say? Yeah,
absolutely.
Wonderful. Cool. And amazing. And so what would you guys give? Like, we'll start with Peter. What would you guys give as like a smart hack? It's a difficult question. A smart life hack to offer the brands who want to work with your assets.
I'd certainly recommend spreading your bets, both across the non-independents and independents, because there's different audiences to reach and different modalities to sort of reach them with. So I mean, I come from an independent background, so of course I would ask that partnerships are pushed into those areas, because previously it's been very easy for brands to go, we'll just work with a big international corporation who've got venues across the world, one deal done. And that's great, and that'll appeal to some people. But if you actually split it out and spread it to independent, new up-and-comers, interesting audiences, you'll be appealing to such a sort of more engaged audience rather than someone who just thinks this is just a corporate sponsorship deal.
Brilliant. And yourself, Dave?
Let me have a think. I think, you know what you were talking about earlier, about just trust us to get on with the job. Once the brand has like identified the community that they're trying to tap into, they need to find the leaders of that community, tell them what they're trying to get out, the initiative, and then kind of get out the way. You know what I mean? Like, just let the people that are leading the culture tell you how best to involve yourself and authentically become part of that culture. And then I think get out of the way, and then just see what happens. I think you just got to trust. I know it sounds ridiculous, but yeah, I just think that we've had similar experiences in terms of, you know, working with brands in a way to develop artists from really early. So like, I remember me and my business partner did an event called the Cookout with Jamal Edwards in 2016, and we worked with Relentless, the energy drink. And we sort of sold them in on this lineup of, all right, this is going to be the future of emerging talent. Like, I was fully blagging. I didn't have a clue yet. But they just trusted us and said, you know what, you guys tell us what's cool and what's going to be interesting. And on that lineup, you know, now we look back and there was like Dave, AJ Tracy, you know, really big artists, like basically the biggest artists in the UK. And we actually created such tangible relationships with them as a result of that. And yeah, that's what needs to happen more.
Yeah, that was quite a blag.
Yeah, it is a blag, yeah. But I keep doing it, so it must be good.
It works.
Maybe you do actually know something. Maybe it's not a black.
Yeah, at the time, definitely.
Absolutely, and I guess if you catch, in terms of the audience, we find a lot that the audiences, when you get those artists just at the very beginning of their trajectory, I mean, their audience is so engaged, right?
100%. Like, I always think about like how I behave personally, which is that I just listen to the same music, really, that I've listened to forever. Yeah, I don't find that much new stuff now in my life and like get really excited by it and I have to go and buy a ticket for it. In part because we're just busy. Like, I think that when you're younger, your connection with artists and that world it's just very different. Like, you kind of want to, we were talking about with the artists we work with, like, you want to take a fan from, like, finding you randomly on Spotify to, like, camping outside your festival. Do you know what I mean? Like, camping outside your headline show to get a ticket. Like, how do you get them on that journey where they're so ingrained in your journey and, like, who you are? And frankly, it's just much easier when they're a bit younger. Like, we're just too solid when we get older. You know, we're just too rigid, too jaded.
Yeah, we had the, like, Jessie J's fans camped out for, it felt like weeks. I was like, okay.
That's what I bet they were all youths, do you know what I mean? Like, youngers and that, so.
They were. They didn't have jobs to go to, so.
Yeah, that too, yeah.
And yourself, Maddy?
I think that exactly what both of you said about being authentic, being bespoke, you know, not doing a sort of blanket approach to everything. You know, we have so much data information about audience demographics and we can be really, really focused on that in terms of our approach to our target audience. And I think if there is a campaign or is a sort of a piece that you want to do, look at the different facets of that, which is, you know, you can work with a venue, and then you can also work with artists, and then you can also work with festivals, and then you can also think, you know, a little thing that I just thought of just then was, you know, we work with White Claw at our venues, and they're obviously taking that kind of market by storm, obviously blanket approach to it, but little things like they will do the out of home outside our venues. So the people coming to our venues will come through the tube doors and they'll see their pictures of White Claw as they come through the tube doors. So it's things like that thinking about how can you tag on little pieces onto that campaign and really make the most of it. I think that's kind of an important approach to sort of be multifaceted with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So multifaceted authenticity. And we can, if you guys were to give, the buzzword each for everyone to remember, and we'll start with you, Maddy.
Well, I have to give multifaceted then.
Multifaceted. Let me guess, authenticity.
Oh, man, don't do that. Authenticity.
I'd say creativity.
There you go. Multifaceted authenticity and creativity. So we'd like to open up now for you guys, because we've got to wrap up in just a moment. If anyone has any questions in the room.
So my question is in terms of partnerships, especially now when people are talking about diversity and inclusion, are you looking for partners that carry that message? Are you actively searching out a partner that is ethical in terms of what your brands or your entity is into?
Okay, let's start with Maddy.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and I think the way to create the authenticity with a partnership is to make sure that you're working with people that have the same vision and same goals. It makes it so much easier to actually work together than sort of almost doing square peg round hole, working with a partner that perhaps isn't got quite the same fit. So I think, one, it makes it easier to do that, and two, it is really important. So focusing on things like sustainability, diversity, etc. And there are ways that brands can kind of help us as well to improve on those functions. You know, it's like if we're doing a new sustainability initiative, are there any brands out there that are leading the way, or potentially other brands that want to kind of help us with that sort of program to move forward? So I definitely think that's something we consider.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like my company is pretty diverse and inclusive because me and my business partner are just very different blokes, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like working class black male, he's like queer Jewish fella, like with a ponytail, you know. We are in nature diverse, and then our team is like 75% women, and it's just, I go into the office every day and that's how it feels. And so when we talk to brands, we try and ask them, you know, we try and see if they're willing to hear what we have to say. So it's more, I feel like what Maddy's saying, like when we talk to brands, it's like, do we feel heard as a company and as a team? And because we will listen to other people, and it's just like, will they listen to us? So we're kind of open to working with anybody that makes sense and is willing to learn. And we all, in turn, will always be willing to learn, like what Maddy was saying, for sure. So we are definitely looking for people that are looking to push the boundaries forward, looking to be culturally progressive, and, you know, in doing so, are looking to learn and grow mentally and philosophically, to answer your question.
And that's right. I mean, it's like, that's the essence of a partnership, isn't it? When we're moving in, it's both companies it's both sides challenging each other to do better in different areas and to bring about change. Because I think with partnerships, it's an amazing way to actually exact these things. It's big. You know, you can do big campaigns, you can get out there, be innovative, get in people's faces, you know, in a good way. So yeah, very important. Pete?
It's just a simple message, really. I think if the ethics align, people see it, and if they don't, they respond quite badly to it. So, you know, getting that partnership correct is the way to amplify it.
Cool. Have we got any more questions?
Hi guys, really interesting stuff. I'm just curious. I'm somebody who's worked on the brand side, but now I'm involved in a tech platform that, you know, we're going to showcase later. But from a brand perspective, you're in at one of your venues and you got X amount of 1,000 people. The brands are interested in that million people that couldn't actually get in there. What are you doing to facilitate that? You talked about UGC earlier, but what else are you doing? And are the brands coming with those ideas to actually say, hang on a second, we're talking to millions of people all over the world and we want that association, that vibe, that energy? What kind of conversations are you guys having with brands on that?
As a promoter, we say the most important people who come to your event are the ones who don't. So that kind of FOMO, the right placement. I'm not talking about banners and that kind of thing. There's other ways to do it, and it's certainly got a lot more creative. When I was working at Global Gathering, a lot of the sponsorship was tobacco-based, and the laws changed globally. And then you suddenly saw this real creative twist across the world through Southeast Asia, Northeast Europe changed very quickly, and people found a way to get past that. I think we've gone one step further now, and it's not just renaming Marlborough Red Flash. It's now we're doing something which is interactive and interesting, and that creates good photo and video points, which obviously can transmit much further. And with the global reach of certain events, or, you know, maybe not even global, but a regional reach, you'll get that if the event is worth it, and especially if money's been spent on the event. The event itself will probably look more creative. It'll look more stunning visually, and people will want to take those Instagram moments. I hate that phrase, but it's a thing.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think that also though, like, if you don't have content, then it's like it never happened. Do you know what I mean? Like, if this party happens, it's best party in the world, and there's no photos and no videos, to most people it just never happened, you know. And so, like, I think when we talk to brands, we are always really clear on the content deliverables we'll have from that event, you know, making sure that, you know, we do the basics in terms of videography, photography, all of that sort of stuff, and we have a very clear package that they're going to be happy with after the event. I think actually my head of brand partnerships is here, and she ran an amazing series with Shivas, the whiskey. And like, as part of that series, we made sure we had a media partner on board. We made sure we got X amount of press pieces. We had a whole YouTube series of interviews that came afterwards. The brand is still, you know, repurposing those images and videos for promotional purposes. We even came up with like a digital spend campaign that they could implement if they wished with the budget that they had for promotion and marketing. So I think it's like, in terms of what you were talking about, working in a partnership to go, right, what are you trying to get out of it, and how can this event or these moments live digitally for a long time, and what formats do we need to deliver that in? Is it TikTok ready? Is it YouTube ready? Is it YouTube Shorts ready? Instagram Reels ready? And delivering that package alongside everything we do has been like super important.
Yeah, so like one night there's a show. I mean, there's a whole year's worth of content that can be packaged up from that, right?
100%. And like, to your question, and to answer it, it's like making stuff that people are going to want to share and talk about in a very simple way. I hope that answers it.
And behind the scenes content as well, right?
Yeah, defo. Like, people want to see the real, how stuff comes together, who the characters are. They want to see that stuff. It's not just like, hey, here's crowd having fun. Ooh, that stuff is boring over time, and it looks like an advert, you know?
Totally. I mean, if you can be a brand that can humanize the artist for the fans who are obsessed with them, then that's a good thing, right?
Or humanizes the fans for the fans, you know? Like, follows the fan journey through the event. And like, all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, wish I was there and had this perspective. It's about trying to take snapshots of, you know, other perspectives and other ways of experiencing this experience after the fact.
Amazing. Cool. Any other questions do we have? I think I'm getting, it's going to wrap up soon.
How would a brand with no track record or history in music become, you know, authentic in the music space? How would they make their first step?
Who would like to?
I think all the things we sort of spoke about today with, you know, you don't have to necessarily have an alignment with music currently, but if the values and the visions and the goals are the same and the audience demographic fits, then it's like we were saying before, you know, come to the experts, and we can work on somewhere that it can make sense, you know. These things it might not make sense to start with, and it might not be something that a brand has thought of before, but it's a great opportunity to look at something new, and it's exciting. And, you know, work with people that have done it before, who are able to give that advice and say, you know, what is your vision? What's your audience demographic? What are you looking to get out of this? And then let them do the work and come back to you and say, well, this is how we think it can integrate. And there'll be, you know, there are lots of brands that align with music that you wouldn't, you know, a few years ago think that made any sense. You know, there's lots of, you know, tech, finance, etc. brands that you just think, yeah, they're aligned with music that you wouldn't necessarily have thought about 10 years ago or so. It's just something that is just consistently built upon year on year.
Because they've, like, I guess, tangibly and authentically supported that community,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I think, just to add to that as well, like, music just sits, what Charlie was saying in his intro, like, music sits perfectly at an intersection of culture. And like, culture isn't just about sound, and it's again about communities. And, you know, people, if you can, you know, to answer your question, like, if you can think about who your target audience is and what your demographic is, you can start to work out, well, why you're trying to target them and what other things that they like. I think a great example is that Monzo. Like, it's like a bank, but it's like a sexy bank. Do you know what I mean? Like, they came out of like these amazing neon cards, and like, they made it feel very Gen Z, you know, and their messaging was so for young people, and all of a sudden, like, Monzo became like a thing that people dropped in like rap lyrics. Do you know what I'm saying? So like, but that has nothing to do specifically with music. It's at the intersection of culture, like what people like to digest and what they're talking about. So to answer your question, I think, you know, really identifying who you're trying to target and where you sit at the intersection, and then doing what Maddy says and finding those people that are leading and pioneering, or, you know, open to platforming in those spaces. So
I was just going to say, yeah, if you're a brand and you get dropped in a rap lyric, you've made it.
Just approaching that the other way, unsuccessful. When I've seen unsuccessful partnerships, there's been an obsession on the metrics. If it doesn't get 1 million likes, it hasn't done the thing what they wanted to. And having deliverables like that is totally the wrong thing to do, because 1 like is a click of a finger. If you've got 10,000 people loving it, that's where it builds. But I also would say, if you're going to commit to it, commit for more than just 1 campaign, 1 year. You know, commit authentically, and I think in time it will pay itself back.
And like, music touches everything. Like, music's everywhere, and everyone loves music. So I think as a brand, don't be afraid of stepping into that world. There's always an authentic and creative way that you can actually engage it properly and work with artists, with fans, and do something amazing.
I think also as well, a recent bit of work that we did with looking at our audience with a new project that we're doing that's in the art world. And we were looking at the crossover between audiences that were our demographic and those that were exploring the art world, you know, 180 The Strand, Tate, etc. And actually the crossover there was ridiculous. It was like 90%. So I think people think music is this kind of own sphere, but actually it's part of culture. So if you're wanting to tap into culture, or maybe you already are, music is just another aspect of that.
Absolutely. Music, art, culture, fashion, everything. It's just like, it's all part of one big thing, isn't it? Right?
Multifaceted.
A multifaceted thing. Wonderful. Do we have any more questions? Because I think we're literally at the end, so I retract that. No more questions. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you to the panelists.